Comedy Writers Colony, Meet 9 for our Saturday Writers Group, which has been going great, by the way. I've been really having a lot of fun with this. I think it's very interesting to get people over here strictly as writers. Most of them want to be stand-ups, but they all have interest in other projects. So a lot of people are putting together screenplays and stories and video series and social media. It's just fascinating to have people focus specifically on the writing, even if they're not exactly writers. Like I make the distinction at the beginning of this class that there are people who need writing and want to do some writing, and then people that are dedicated writers. And it's a different subset of people. So I teach this for the dedicated writers, but I think it's very useful for anybody that wants to do creative. So we launched in this week with Housekeeping. I talked again sort of to get everybody oriented. This past week, I set up the Comedy Writers Colony open writing system. And that's an online ecology environment of folders in Google Doc that are sort of all centralized, that I centralize for people, and that they can use to upload files or open files and put in writing that they can invite other people into to start tabs and make commentaries, do rewrites, add jokes, anything that can improve that script. So it's being built as an online environment where you can do sort of like a writer's room, and that writer's room can get as big as you want it to be. You just add as many people as you want, and you take the stuff that you like and you do things with it, and you collaborate with other people. Hopefully it's going to really grow because I super enjoy it. And I put a bit in there, the Jeffrey Dahmer bit for people to get started. All you have to do is join the Comedy Writers Colony Facebook group, the private Facebook group, and ask permission, and I'll put you into the open writing system. So last week we did comedians as transgressors, very interesting stuff. This week it's almost kind of the opposite. These are comedians as ethnographers. And ethnography is one of those academic sounding terms, and I love ethnography because I did some ethnography along with criticism. When I was a professor, as one of the methods that I used, ethnography, as a definition, ethno means people and graphy means writing. So this is writing deeply about people and locations and cultures. Essentially, the idea is it grew out of, in some ways, deep journalism, and before that, anthropology, where anthropologists would go to tribes, exotic tribes in other parts of the world, and live with them and observe them and write about them deeply, and then bring that writing back to other cultures so they can explain that tribe for people who haven't been there. Very interesting process. It's good and bad. Like, it's good because we learn other cultures. From anthropology and sociology, we also learn how to exploit those other cultures. So it's a little iffy sometimes, a little complicated, but for comedians, it gets to be fascinating because basically any culture or subculture that you have deep experience with or interest in and you observe, you can then turn into comedy, bring it to stage and talk about it. And people love it. Audiences love this kind of comedy. They react really well to exotic information or information about exotic cultures and new cultures and different cultures. It's one of those things that human beings are just naturally interested in, so it works really well for stand-up. And you basically have 3 steps here. You have you need methods for capturing the sort of life world that you're going into. So you got to go into it and you can just think about it, notice things, and hope you remember that, or you can take notes, you can take pictures, you can take video. You have to capture it somehow. Secondly, you have to figure out how to communicate that to other people that haven't been there. And for stand-ups, we're talking specifically in this section about how do you translate this into stand-up comedy, which is a different way of communicating about a life world or another culture than journalists would use, or sociologists or academics, or just ordinary people who are traveling and doing tourism, for example. So you figure out how to communicate to people, and then you actually get up and communicate it. You actually do that. Which, those 3 stages, it can fall apart at any point. But if you put it together really well, you have really interesting life worlds that you've captured incredibly well, and you've translated that into good communication, and then you can actually do that communication. Man, it just clicks as stand-up comedy. And some of the ways we started talking about this in the class, I tend to grab examples constantly from people in the class in the live workshop, which is why I really like live workshops, is because you got people there who can supply energy and newness and information from their own experience. And it just instantly starts to pop off all over the place. Because they're stand-ups, we started right into deviance cultures. Jonathan had been to a strip club this past week. Part of us, almost as he's partly an academic, and it was an academic exercise partly for him because he teaches sales, and he was fascinated by the transactional nature of the women in the strip club, how good they were at instantly turning everything into money talk and a transaction, and how unnormal that is in regular culture. Most sales interactions, you've got to ease your way through it. There's a lot of social added into the interaction. People don't like a very hardcore, bare, right in your face, buy this interaction. But in strip clubs, it's different. So it's very interesting. And again, lots to talk about there. And that moved off into talking about Amsterdam red light district. And Zizi said there's also a blue light district for trans. Very interesting. I never heard that. Massage parlors, swingers groups, brothels, orgies, all those things are subcultures and sub-activities within the culture that stand-ups would talk about and audiences would find interesting, especially if you like deviance comedy. Then everybody went up on stage, and we heard all sorts of really interesting subcultures and experiences that could be turned into stand-up. Gilly talked about when he was in marching band, there was an exchange program with African band and especially drummers, and they spoke in cliques. And so most people have seen that as an African tribe thing, but they never experienced it. Gilly experienced it, so we played around with that as comedy a little bit. Again, Jonathan had gotten some training in pickup culture in Bulgaria from a specific workshop. Again, as an academic, he sort of goes around and sort of explores these different areas. Pat talked about being in jail for 8 months. Phil talked about dating a person who flipped clothes. And we talked about flipper culture. There's just a lot going on when you start to look at your life and as a comedian. If you start to look at it as an ethnographer, basically any place you go in, you can excavate interesting stuff and turn it into jokes. So that's what we're working on. I think when I teach this as a full module, helping stand-ups to see themselves, it's not the academic value, it's not the intellectual value, it's the comedic value. But there's still intellectual value in learning these other cultures. And we talked about some of the examples of, like, Dave Chappelle, for 30 plus years has made a living by deeply explaining black culture to white culture. And he's very good at it. And then, every subgroup, no matter what it is, can talk about itself to the larger culture and vice versa. So cultures in some ways talk to each other through stand-up comedy. Really cool stuff. So we're going to keep working on that. Last part of the class, we turned to not a comedy mechanism like ethnography, but writing skills. And again, I'm always trying to give people advice on upping their writing skills so they can compete for professional work. And this week we talked about mapping if you're a head writer, or if you're a person that likes to write intellectually, you map a topic area instead of just sort of doing it with kind of haphazard thought processes. You bring structure to it, which means you take everything at its broadest level and then move it all the way down to its smallest level. If you think about, like, a Netflix has a menu when you pull it up on your TV screen, and it's basically a block. It's an array of here are all the things you could go into today. You scroll down it and very quickly see a lot of different information and make choices. That's a very well mapped set of information. And when you do that, your brain doesn't have to do all that sort of cognitive mapping and holding things together. The map is right in front of you. So for stand-ups and for people writing comedy, if you have that map, have all the information laid out right there, you don't have to think about it. You can still do sort of abstract thinking and combinational thinking, creative thinking, but the hardcore information is right in front of you, and that is super helpful. The example we used about this, like, you can do it with anything. So if you're writing about sandwiches, and say there's, up here it says sandwiches, and then down here it has like 50 different types of sandwiches you could do comedy about. As you go down the list, there's things like French dip. which is an interesting sandwich because is it a sandwich or is it a soup and sandwich or broth and sandwich? Because you dip it into something before you actually eat it. And then there's some things that aren't labeled sandwiches, but they are the same thing as sandwiches. A calzone is basically just a folded sandwich with some kind of seal on it. Tacos could be called sandwiches, hamburgers, hot dogs. So that's something to explore again within the idea world behind sandwiches. And then you keep going, you get to something like Subway with all its famous Jared drama, which again was a very popular topic in stand-up for a long time because it's a deviance area and it's so crazy that this guy had been a public figure for so long, got caught with as a pedophile. And so that's a great area for stand-up. So again, as a writing skill, learning to map in very structured ways, even visualizing it on a board, like a lot of times in writers' rooms, they write everything on big whiteboards so that everybody can see the map. It's like, here's 22 episodes of this sitcom that we're going to do this season. And here's every one of those with its own little area and its own little outline on the whiteboard. Because the more mapping visually, the easier it is to keep track of all that information and share it very quickly with other writers. So finally, we finished up a little bit of housekeeping again to remind people to use the Comedy Writers Open Writing System. And I gave everybody an assignment, which I put into the writing system under my folder on whales. So if you go into that folder, you will see I've opened up a subfolder that's titled Whales as a stand-up topic. And if you go in there, again, you can map it. So all the different types of whales, you could write comedy about each one of them. Or you could lay out all the different facts, biological facts about whales. There's a lot about whales that's very interesting. It all started because I noticed once on a nature show that everything else, like dolphins and everything, is working really hard to gather all these fish together so that they can eat. And they dart in and out of this fish ball that they've collected, and they grab fish. And then a whale just comes along underneath that and just eats the whole thing. It'd be like, everybody else is going into the restaurant, but a whale comes up and eats the entire restaurant. It's like, oh, this looks good. Y'all get out of the way. I'm eating everything. It's a crazy way to eat. Nothing else on the planet just eats everything in a vicinity. If there were land whales that did that on land, like most horrific animal ever in all of existence. Like everybody's scared of the Tyrannosaurus Rex and things like that. They still ate things one at a time. It's like, oh, look at that beautiful herd of caribou. They're so lovely. What is that? Oh my God, it's a land whale. It swallowed the whole herd. Oh, you can still hear them in there dissolving from the whale acid. So again, whales are very weird. Anytime you go across species, you get sort of a cultural ethnography or a species ethnography. But you can write about that, go into the folder system, experiment, have fun with it. And we're going to see next week what people bring back to the class about whales. And that will be Meet 10. We'll see you next time.